Hey friend, I'm Jess M. Cutler, and welcome back to another episode of the ENSPIRES podcast. This is episode 16. And if you're following along on the podcast, then you know every other week you get to hear just straight from me my stories of success and struggles in the encourage part of the series. But on the other alternate weeks, I have the pleasure of inviting guests onto here and talking about either their story of reinvention or just their particular insights or inspirations in their calling, their passion, their purpose. And sometimes it's a little of both. So it's just party bonus. It's whatever direction the conversation goes. So if you were listening on the last, I guess it would have been episode 14, I had my sister on here. And she was talking about how she lost all of her memory when she was 17 years old and had to rebuild an identity and find her calling from that point in her life. But that was a fun episode, but I'm super excited about today. Today's going to be very cool, very different. And while my sister, obviously, I've grown up with her, so she's no stranger to me and I'm no stranger to her story. The gentleman that I have on today is a bit of a stranger to me, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, because we really just met in person about 2 years ago, right? And you are the national director for Nations of Coaches, but he's my uncle by marriage. And he has apparently been my uncle for my entire life. Yeah, for my entire life, this man has been my uncle, even though I just met him 2 years ago. So we'll talk about that in a couple minutes, but welcome.
Hey,
this is Coach and Uncle Pete Wehry. Welcome to the ENSPIRES podcast.
This is awesome, Jess. This is unbelievable. We're climbing the ladder of life, figuring out what God has done. And honestly, it's humbling. It's exciting. You used the word, it's redemptive. Man, it's redemptive what God has done. And it's not hard for me to talk about because both your aunt, who you've known now at least 2 years and 1 day more, you know her like a day longer. So your aunt and I have clearly seen through our lifetime God's hand in our life, and even in this scenario.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like we have to give them like a little bit of backstory because I'm sure people are like, how in the world? Because I very much believe God's timing, divine appointments, and I mean, should you tell it or should I tell it? I mean, I feel like the way Will and I always begin the story of how we actually became family was we begin with like my mama Tig. She was real popular with the fellas when she was younger. We always start there, right? But anyway, and I guess I'll tell my little part of it, and then you can chime in and kind of tell like your side of it as well. So
perfect.
Yeah. So my mama Tig, which is my mom's mom, she was real popular with fellas when she were younger. And my mom we thought she was one of 6. And, brothers, had a sister. And there was always like a rumor growing up in our family that there was like she left and disappeared for a few years and had a baby in Florida. But like my mom like directly asked her when she was alive, like, did you? And she was like, no, I sure didn't. So it was one of those things where we just kind of dismissed it and moved on with the rest of our lives. But thanks to, what was it? Ancestry or 23andMe? Which one was it? Ancestry?
Ancestry. And Lisa's sister, Renee.
Okay, so Ancestry.com, like one of my, I would say, I think he's like my second cousin. He got on there and started putting in information. And then Lisa's sister in her adopted family, she went in there, was like, I just want to know about you. And so she went in there and put in Lisa's information and they got a hit. And the thing that's weird, and I actually didn't know this until I was talking to Lisa last time, like they tell you like you have a first cousin in Florida. They don't actually tell you who it is. Like they don't build the connection. They're just kind of like, yeah, here you go. So anyway, they got on the phone, Lisa and my cousin Mike, and they started having this conversation and ultimately put 2 and 2 together and realized that my mom had a sister who was indeed in Florida. So I'm 50-ish, not possibly 60, but 50 some-ish years later, like now we have this new, awesome, wonderful aunt, family member, and uncle. And I know for me, whenever I first met y'all, you both shine so brightly just the light of Christ in your life. And I knew, and the first time I ever heard you speak and we ever had a conversation, I knew once my podcast got up and running again, you would be coming on here. So yeah, so that is technically how he has been my uncle my entire life, but yet we've only met 2 years. So divine appointment.
There's so many variables in there that is so exciting to hear you say, because my wife didn't care about finding out. Not that she was against finding out. She was very grateful that I think day 2, she was brought into a Christian home. And the truth is she has 2 other sisters that are adopted. And then she has 2 sisters and a brother. And there's some others. They're out there and she just always felt blessed and at home there. But when this came up, she was pretty ecstatic. And there are so many other things I could say. First of all, that we connected the first time when your mom walked in. I said, okay. When Audrey walked in, Audrey looked like that's, by the way, for everybody that's listening, that's your aunt. Okay. When she walked
sisters,
in,
though, all sisters.
that kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, because her hair was darker and it kind of looked like Lisa's was when she was even 40, 50. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then, we sat with the family and they're out, and there's no other way to put this. They're out of Robbins, North Carolina. And I'm like, this is happening fast for a guy from New England. And it was such a blessing because we saw God's providential hand in connecting them. We saw God's providential hand for Lisa being where she was, because then God allowed me to meet her. And this, my story is crazy because I just found out 3 years ago that my dad is not my dad. My mom had a one-night stand with her love of her life when she was from her high school years, and their marriage was rocky. There's so much time, but I see God's hand in all this, that God took 2 people that some people would say, oh, careful, I use this term, messed up, but we're not. We're redeemable. And God has knit us together, and there's been a real strong high blessing for the connection we've had with your mom, your aunt, even the brothers, they're all different, so crazy, and just family. And we're just very, very grateful. And I'm honored you to say that about us being on a podcast, but here's the truth. I was 15 and I liked 2 things, Jess. Do you know what 2 things I like?
No, what do you like?
I liked athletics and girls. And then when I came to Christ as a believer, I was like, okay, I probably can't start a women's ministry. I thought about it, right? So now what do I do? And that's how I even end up coaching, impacting young people, I pray, mentoring, and then the journey with Nations of Coaches, which is a bit of a story.
So let's dive in. So you've given just a little bit of backstory, but before you get into true Nation of Coaches, I read through your bio and I was very impressed, but can you just kind of share and just kind of give me what has kind of been your path to where you are now?
Yeah, very, very easily. And now, is this a 3-hour podcast? Because I can roll on this. Here's a long story short.
I mean, we try to keep it at an hour, but however the Lord leads, right?
Yeah. So I'm 15 years old. Again, I don't know what I want to do. I am all about me. I'm going to get stuff done. I love athletics. And my mom goes to Bible study and becomes a believer. My parents were a broken home. I had 3 stepsisters, my sister, my brother, and I. My oldest sister, had been a boy, we would have been the Brady Bunch. We come together, right? It's, blood runs thicker than water. Conversations are tough, but God is doing a good work. My dad, my mom, and my 4 sisters, that is 3 stepsisters and my sister, all come to Christ, and I think it's a cult. I don't want anything to do with it. It's right when Jim Jones is having people drink the juice. I actually think I'm going to get duct tape thrown in a van and listen to Christian music. I'm scared. I just wanted to have fun. But God used all that in a lot of different ways to speak to me. Got saved, come to a point where okay, now what do I do with my life? So right away, I knew I wanted to use athletics. So I went to college. I was a PE major, didn't really love that. And I could see that. And then my pastor said to me, hey, we're all new in the faith. He said, you ought to look into youth work because no school's going to just hire a coach. You got to have a job. You can be good in it. I never feel called to be a pastor. I don't even like to be called pastor. I am ordained, but Pastor Pete, the other initials are PP. I don't want to be called PP. All right. So long story short,
roll off the tongue well.
But I'm coach. That's what I was as a youth pastor. They called me coach, and I coached high school soccer and basketball, and was the AD and the youth pastor at the church. Through that, we did that for 11 years. God opened doors, and I got more involved with high-level basketball. God led us to Florida for 3 years. Actually, Lisa took care of her mom with dementia. I coached at a high-profile public school, met some high-profile coaches. Then I went to Indiana, coached high school. And while there, getting my master's, I started going to this college to get a master's. And this is just the truth. I do love people. I do love mentoring young people. The energy that I think I bring to that, they saw. And one of my strengths is that I'm probably, it could be a weakness. There are times I'm probably too transparent. So long story short is I wasn't afraid to address issues that back in the day, especially in the church, you don't talk about. Like, this guy's got something going on. Well, he's just bad. No, he's just a boy and he's got it going on. We got to help him, right? Long story short is that they hired me as the dean of students, assistant basketball, then asked me to be the head coach. Now, this is, I'm in my middle 40s, early 50s. While doing that, I go to the Final Four. That's one of the perks. And I see this ministry, actually the NABC, National Association of Basketball Coaches, started a ministry called Nation of Coaches. And what we do is we serve coaches professionally, familial, and then spiritually if they want it. And I was like, if I could do this, now I was thinking I'd be a character coach, invest in the players. But what has happened is I was the first regional director. We moved from Wisconsin to Florida. I want people to hear this because God's big. We moved from Wisconsin to Florida at 25%. We had to raise a certain amount. We were only at 25. I said, we're going anyhow. We're supposed to go. And my office was scared to death. Lived in a house for free for 6 months. A quarter of our income was going to Drew going to a small Christian school. Well, big Christian school. Long story short is within a year, we had 100%. And then, and we, for the last 10 years, we've never, not only not had once, we've been able to help raise money for the ministry because God is in this. We are helping coaches navigate some of the most difficult times they've ever had in their lives. And coaches, marriages are at risk. They're gone 180 days. That's not healthy for a marriage. So we do marriage retreats for them. We partner with Chick-fil-A. You know, I'd go in so many different areas. But what we do is we help coaches. And at first, coaches are very guarded. They don't really trust people because there's two truths about coaches. They get hired and they get fired. And so they're very careful. Their circle is small. The trust factor there is hard. And so you just try to be very encouraging and trustworthy, and then God's just blown it up. When I started, we had what we call 50 character coaches. We have over 250 trained, like all over the country. So that's what we do.
So, okay. So I didn't want to interrupt. But I want to kind of go backwards because you obviously, now I'm going to skip around just a little bit, but you were talking about how in the beginning, whenever you were talking about finding religion and just it being like feeling like you were in a cult, what was it that really kind of shifted you from that mentality then into like, oh, this doesn't have to be this cult religion, like this can be a relationship? Because I will say, whenever I met you, that was one of the things that I was trying to understand between, like, growing up, obviously, as a preacher's kid, what it's like to be in the ministry where you are the preacher and you're the preacher's fan. It's all about religion and switching into that relationship. And when I met you, I was like, he has a relationship with Christ. Like, he doesn't have a religion with Christ. He has a relationship. So what for you was this big transition moment for you?
So first of all, Jess, you would say that's probably the most honoring thing you could say about me. But here's a couple of things. I'm 15 years old. I know I'm lost. Now, what I mean by that is, like, I know, like, I am telling you this, Jess. I've told 100 people this. If I had been in your church, your mom would have said, don't get near that boy. Because
you said that about all boys, so it wouldn't really have been like anything against you personally.
No, it's just like, I was like, man, like, I just was out of control, right? What did it was there were a couple of guys that were like 16. I was 15. They were 15, 16, and they were real. They really knew who God was, and they loved God, and they didn't preach at me. They were just kind and gracious. In fact, I tell the story all the time. This kid, I went to a VBS. I'm at this VBS. This kid, I'm not a believer. He throws me on the ground. I get up and go, what the beepity beep beep are you doing? And he said, well, brother, don't swear. And I said, well, don't throw me on the ground. And then he said, do you know if you died right now where you'd go? And I went, what, is there a hearse coming around the corner? What are you talking? And to me, respectfully, that's just weird. He looked at me and said, are you saved? And I thought that was a coupon. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. And I think the church has a tendency to do that instead of just be kind, be gracious, let your light shine, be salt and light, let the Holy Spirit work in this person's life. You don't have to do the work. And that was the difference. And by the way, it took 6 months for me to just hang around a couple of those guys. And finally, I went in and told my mom, I said, they got something I don't got. And I'm interested. That was the beginning of it.
Okay. So then you say, obviously, you strengthen your weakness being that ability to be vulnerable, to share and things like that. Was that always a thing that you had, or is that something that you had to develop over years of coaching and education and training? And
oh no, I'm way too vulnerable. It's probably I'll tell people anything. Like I've said to people, this is what I got to raise. I mean, I'll give them the number, and they'll be like there's some people that couldn't do that, but just like, this is what God's called me to do. God's big. This is what we got to do. I've actually said to a donor, I don't even know if I should say this out loud, partner at Mission, I said, there are times, and the guy's name is Chris. I said, there are times, Chris, that I struggle inside. Am I really your friend, or do I need you to get support? And he just laughs. He goes, that's why I support you, because I know you have that tension in you. Like we can play games all day long, or we can be transparent, honest. Like, I want to love you, but I gotta be honest, man. I cannot thank God enough for you. And I don't even know how to explain it. It's just been my personality, and I don't do well with people that hide things, and so I have to grow in that area. But I do understand. I learned much from the finding out about my growth by being my mom's scenario with having me. I learned that I was different. I was treated different by my. So I had a lot of self-confidence, which is another word for, at times, arrogance and pride. But then you have Jesus working in you. And so you learn humility, and then you go back to pride. Then you learn humility, and then you go back to pride for a month, and you go learn humility for the challenge, right? The tension. That what I would do, I don't do, Paul. But the truth is that was going on. And I believed in what God had called me to do. I'm not we're maybe transitioning to a different area of the country as part of our ministry. And there are big questions about this. And I'm going to say this on this podcast. We may not go there, but we just, we are looking at the New England area. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So what I make right now, we will have to make $50,000 more to live in Boston area. That's what but I know I can raise it, not because I can do it, because God's that big. Here's the kicker. My office is concerned because we have like a structure, a pay structure, and I get that. So we're up there. You need to hear this. This is all what God does. We're out there trucking. Lisa and I are looking at apartments. Okay, we looked at 12 apartments in 2 days. Somebody said, what do you remember about them? I don't know. I don't care. I'm so sick of seeing apartments. And this couple, guys with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, says, hey, can we have coffee? Yeah. And I got his number. He sits down. He goes, we'd like you to live with us for free.
Wow.
Did you hear? So yeah. It's not going to cost us any more, and we're going to be able to impact New England for the gospel. I'm like, and by the way, we still keep our place here, and there's so many dynamics here because the listeners don't know this, but we live with our kids. We have an in-law suite. I'm not dead. I'm 61. I got energy. I got juice. There are times it is a lot, but he has 3 grandkids and 2 kids he's fostering, and they need help. And if we're not mentoring the next generation, then what are we doing? If you aren't doing a podcast to inspire people, then what are we doing? We could, what we could do? You could do a podcast on life sucks. That probably won't sell, but you know what? It probably would sell. There are a lot of people
that would
watch that one.
Yeah. Probably even more than inspiration, because people love misery.
That's so true. I mean, what you are doing, and I'm going to say it, Jess, I don't know all that God has me. What you're doing is you're changing a life. How do we do that? One at a time. And how do we do that? We be great by serving. Serve others, love others, love God, love others. It's not that hard. And I know I just gave a lot of juice there, but it's reality.
It's not that hard, but it is hard. It is one of those things that walking in obedience is not easy, especially whenever you need $50,000 more and you go and you view 12 different apartments in 2 days and you're like, hey God, I know you're calling me to do this, but like, I'm gonna need some help. And I think the one thing that I have a coach, I have just a regular business coach. And the thing that she said to me one day, and it's the thing that I have to put on repeat, that anytime I'm in that particular moment, it's God provides where he guides. God provides where he guides. So it's like, okay, if you're wanting me here, then I'm going to need your provision. Like, I'm going to need your providence in my life. Like, I'm going to need to see this. And then boom, it's like, hey, can we have coffee? Like, will you just live with us for free? And it's like,
well, we either believe in Jehovah Jireh or we believe in Jehovah Visa. And one you got to pay back, right? Because Visa is like not what you want to be swiping all the time. Better to trust in God. And he's the Jireh, he's the provider. And where God provides, he will guide. I love it.
Yeah. So, okay. So then I want to go back because I heard you say, obviously your strength, weakness is, being vulnerable, but yet you also led into where you said that when you're coaching some of these coaches, one of the hardest things is that they have a very small circle and they don't trust people very easily. So I can imagine that they are not just vulnerable to you immediately off the bat. There's that level of having to understand that they can give you their trust. And then you also said, see, look at me listening, that you have a hard time when people don't just open up to you. So that's something you're working through. So sounds like you have a struggle there, but obviously you're called into this. This is what you're doing. So how are you working knowing that you are a sharer, you love and you give freely and you want people to know who you are, but you work in an environment, especially when you start working with new coaches, that you know that you're going to have to break through that wall before they'll just allow you to help them.
So really good. When I say this to people that I have the privilege to mentor and guide, there's 4 awares I believe in. There's God aware, something bigger than us. The next key aware is being self-aware. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know how you come across, because you can run over people. That's my potential, right? But when you are God aware and self-aware, you become other aware. And when you're other aware, then you can impact them. The worst you could ever be is unaware. So I'm aware, okay, that I can do this. So I'll give you an illustration. There's a coach. If I was to turn around right now and go like this, from the back, he looks just like me. He's no neck. He's a little overweight. And I've had people walk up, hey, and I won't say his name, but this guy, one of the things you learn as a character coach, whatever, you don't go in the locker room. That's where the players are. That's family. You don't go in there. So I would go, and for 6 months after games and stuff, I would stand, lean up against the wall, my foot up against the wall. I wish I could show you how. Just sit there and wait, and they would come out. I did that for 6 months. How did I learn to do this? Because I know that's how they are. I'm aware that's how they feel. So you have to suppress your own pride and arrogance, and you're patient. And then one day he walked out and he goes, "Weird, yeah, come in here." I mean, out of the blue. About 6 months later, the head coach looked at me and he said, "Pete, let's go get coffee." He was running some camp. He had never said that before. So we went to get coffee and he goes, "Hey, listen, I'd like you to be our mental, spiritual, strength coach. Building guys, but keeping them positive, keeping them not, and as well as do spiritual." I said, "Do you want me? I'll give you another story." I said, "Do you want me to travel with you?" He goes, "Man, if you can, but it's a public university. They can't give money to a ministry. I get it." I said, "Okay." So I said, I'll pray about it. That was Saturday. On Monday, that guy, Chris, gave me a gift of $15,000.
Wow.
So that paid for all the travel. I called the coach who is new in his faith. I said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this." He goes, "You're kidding me." "No, I'm going to be able to travel." He's excited. I'm excited. And the truth is that my wife, who we've already talked about, and his wife now lead a Bible study. But that was 8 years ago, and it's taken time and love, and they're all in. Yeah. They support us. They support Nation Coaches. They come to all in marriage things. They already had an affinity for what we were doing. But by being, I guess for me, it would be adulting, being patient, being mature, stopping and letting God work and not Pete work, then so that the tension's always there. And every gift you have, Jess, there's a counterpart. So you're always trying to figure out the balance. And you know what? You're not always going to get it right, but God is redeemable. You know, I always say this. I don't know how the audience say it, but everybody makes mistakes. Look at my parents. You just got to keep moving forward, right? You just, not everything's going to be, if it was perfect, this is heaven. This is utopia. It'll never be perfect until we get with glory. So,
yeah.
Did that help you define that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like and I don't know that you've watched any of the other previous podcasts, but just that pride and humility struggle, even in my life. And I think it was on a podcast actually that it was like John Maxwell and Ed Milet, and John Maxwell was like when people say that I'm amazing, like what they're admiring are my gifts. And whenever, you know, the reality is God gave me my gifts. So they're admiring him. And for me, it's not going, oh, thank you so much because I'm amazing. It's going, yeah, God gave me this gift. And there's that pride comes through that humility of being able to say, like, God gave these to me. Like what you're seeing, what is great and well and wonderful and amazing about me, he gave to me. It's his, but everything that's like screwed up and messed up about me, like that's all me. And it's that balance of understanding that, like, oh, there are those moments where you are on, you know, the top of the mountain, and then you are also in those valleys, but being able to stand and enjoy, but also give praise to him. But also whenever you're in those low places, understand that, like, he's still there with you, and, you know, that he is continuing to guide you through that. So, but being able to be humble on the top and the bottom.
So Jess, that's a really great statement. I don't know if you even caught, you're going to grab this nugget. One of the greatest leaders of all time was David, King David, which we all know David might have had a few issues. Okay. I'm sure when Absalom came to Thanksgiving, he didn't say, pass the potatoes. I mean, the guy's trying to take his dad's kingdom. But here's the kicker. If you read any of the Psalms, and you said it, here's a great leader that says, God, thank you for who you are. I sent you on the mountain. And then 2 verses later, he going, what is going on? My life sucks. I feel like I'm in the valley of despair. And yet we would all say, phenomenal king. Hey, tell me the greatest leaders of Israel. They're going to say, guys, Bible class, Moses, David, Daniel. Yeah. I mean, David's going to be mentioned. So part of the journey is the mountaintops, but much of the journey is the plateaus. And there are days that we're just living in the valleys. And by the way, you never grow like this. I don't know if the people can see me. Look, everybody, Pete's doing his pencil. Here we go. Like this. It's like this. This is how we grow.
Yeah.
It's never. In our marriages, have you ever had a great day with Will?
Yes, many.
I like Lisa still. Like, we've been married 30 years. But there are days I go, what are you smoking? Like, you're making zero sense to me right now. I don't get it. And it's not because she's dumb or she's wrong. She's different. She is one of the most humble, serving people I know. But even today, she came out of the womb late. Girl, I got to get here. And I am a time idiot. So all of this is part of my journey to become the man I believe God had me be. And if you're not growing, Jess, you're dying. So I'm going to keep growing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's funny you say that. That was me yesterday. It was literally me yesterday. I was downstairs with my team, and I was like, he hasn't even done anything today. He's just irritated me. Like, I don't know if you know that country song that's like, I just want to be mad for a while. He didn't even do anything to be mad about. It's just one of those where it was like, you know what? Today's not your day, Will. I love you so much. Today, not your day. But I love him. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So, okay. So you were a coach for athletes, obviously going through your life, and now you coach the coach of athletes. Am I saying that correct? Let me just make sure I'm getting a baseline read on, like, you coach the coaches. Yes?
That's really a great way of saying it. Billy Graham said this: a coach will have more impact in a person's life than most people do in a year. Now, here's the funny thing. Your business coach had more impact in your life. How long have you had her or him?
It's a her, and this is my second year with her.
Right. She's impacted you so much more than any teacher you had for a year, and you meet once a week, maybe?
Like twice a month.
Right. So I want everybody to hear this. So Billy Graham said this, and this is like, these players are in with these guys all the time. A coach will have more impact in a young person's life than most people do in a lifetime, in 1 year. But then he said, but who's coaching the coaches? And I ask this all the time. Did you play any sports?
Oh, yeah. Volleyball, basketball. Okay.
Did you ever have a good coach?
Yeah, I had great coaches.
Did you ever have?
I had one really fabulous coach. They were all good, but I had one that was like. Okay.
Have you ever had one bad coach?
Oh, yeah.
Whenever I ask this in a group, I hope everybody that's watching the podcast see her face when she said, I had one fabulous coach, and then see her face. Oh, yeah. This is the person that was like living with a wet wedgie. This person made it such a difficult time. And someone needs to step in the life of coach and say, and very hard, because, coaches are, I love to describe them as, self-motivated drivers, but they don't always think about the ramifications, just like you and I can in business, life. So that's what we do. We invest in coaches, especially in their marriages. I told this story. I'm going to say it, Jess. This is crazy. We once had a coach's wife throw the remote at her husband and say, I wish you had another woman. I could at least compete. You are having an affair with basketball every day, and I have no chance. And it broke his heart, and it changed their marriage forever. But as I say that, there's truth. Same thing happens in the church with pastors. The same things happens in business, where a guy is so consumed with becoming the number one salesman or whatever, and his wife's like, and she may go and to the spa, and she may go to hot yoga, and everything looks like it's good, but she is lonely and miserable because he loves business. She's his side gig. And that's not trying to be harsh. I just think we all need to be aware, and by the way, just because I'm a Christian and I love God doesn't mean I'm immune to this.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think even in my, in the things that I've studied, and one of the hardest things for me that I've realized over just this course of just learning God again. I mean, obviously I grew up in a Christian home with a pastor as a dad, but I didn't know him. So as I was, kind of learning how to kind of come in, back into a relationship with him, there was a lot of, I did a breaking free devotion, and it was helping you understand, what are the idols, what are the strongholds in your life. And you think of the easy ones, money, but it's I realized that I was worshiping Invents. Invents was on this pedestal, and it was my God. And I can't remember the verse and you'll probably pull it out quicker than I will, but it's there's a verse that's we make these wooden idols, and then we bow down before this piece of wood. And I started telling myself, I was I'm not going to bow down to something that I quote unquote created. I'm not going to bow down to this wood anymore. Invents is not my God. Invents is not my stronghold. Invents is not my idol. But you have to break those because you worship them. And then everything else in your life that matters, God, husband, family, things that matter don't matter because you're worshiping this false God. And I mean, that maybe that's kind of reaching out a little bit, but it's been one of the things that I've had to realize.
I think that's spectacular because it's in Jeremiah. And he said, you are so foolish. You worship this piece of wood. You take the scrapings and burn the rest. What are you doing? Right. And here's the truth. For me, one of my idols could be my family. I love my family. And so I've got to constantly, but there are so many others. Believe me, the number one idol in my life is me. Whenever somebody says you've got to have self-confidence, and I'm not downplaying this, people will talk about, I'm trying to think the right term, but it's this idea of you've got to like you. Oh, that's never been a problem. I like me. I have to love others and love God. And that's why he gave us, Jesus did this. He said, okay, here's the 10 commandments. But really the first 4 is love me. And the last 6, that is don't steal, don't lie, don't commit adultery, these things. It's love others. Just love me and love others. And I love what you're saying, because you got to constantly bring in, what is my mission for events, what you do. And that is to provide a service to help people. Well, that's different than girls making some cheese. We're flying here. Right? That's not where you want to go.
Right. And I think it's been funny to watch the transition, just in an ironic sort of way, where it's like, it really, like I would say whenever Invent started and what it was for the first probably 4 or 5 years before COVID really knocked it out. And I changed my whole life there. But, before it was really like, how much money can I make? How big can I make this company? And then now it's kind of like, you know what? I just want to like deliver the most excellent event, so that when people look at me and when they work at me, when they see the work that God's able to do through me, they're like, that girl, what does she have that I don't? I want to be around her. And through that is what I want events to be. I just want it to be this place where people are like, not even that we have these great events, but they're like, do you like, the way I explained it to the team is like, I want our clients to feel peace the way that I feel peace whenever I'm in his presence. And I'm like, I don't know if that's an unrealistic goal, but.
Oh, I don't think it's unrealistic. That's a realistic, and it's the only one that matters. Because, and you see it, boy, what you do you see people frayed? Ooh, you see people that they're like, oh, this isn't right. This isn't, and you're trying to keep them. And the truth is, when Lisa and I got married, you don't know this, but she's your aunt. You should know this. So my mom is unbelievable. Everything's got to be, she came out of the womb with a list. Everything's got to be perfect. That's how my mom lives, right? I
would love her.
She went to light the unity candle, and she tripped, and she didn't fall, but she stumbled. And, it's on video. So,
right.
Lisa's like, we should watch our video every year on our anniversary, which we did the first 2 years and haven't since. But anyhow, I had the controller and we're watching it with my mom and dad. And when it got to that, I rewound it and played that like 10 times. My mom's going, that's enough. That's not funny. I can't stop laughing. Because, Mom, if you fell or not, we're still married. We're good. The wedding doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be one of peace and God bring glory. But that's what you deal with. And so you see it. So you being at peace is a sure sign of shining a light of truth. It's awesome.
Okay. So then, let me go back to you. So the phrase that you keep saying over is character coach. Like, you're a character coach. In your words, what does that mean? What does that mean in your relationship? Like, what does that mean?
So what we do is we get behind coaches, as I said, in their marriage, and we are, there to be a counsel. That is the professional side. But the biggest one is what we add is a guide to the program, usually somebody with Athletes in Action, FCA, a pastor that lives in the area, that will come in and accentuate and support that coach's core values and talk to those young men about issues that don't get talked about in schools anymore: integrity, humility, character things, which are a crying need. 87% of Division I basketball players come from single or non-parent homes. Think through that statement. So the only male that they're really getting is that coach, and that coach's marriage, everything. That's what they consider. This is what it's supposed to be like. And so this is what we're doing, and we're dealing with that. And we provide, as a volunteer, we'll provide Bible studies on the side. But these are 18 to 22-year-olds. If an 18-year-old who's now an adult says, I want to learn more about the Bible, then it's a volunteer thing. We never force that. At some schools, they're private. They'll say, no, he's coming in and he's sharing the word. And you know what we find? I have never had a kid go, I don't want to hear this. Right? The volunteer kids, if there's 16 on a team, 4 or 5 will come. But for the character moments, all are in there. And it's not anything different than walking in and hearing a seminar on the importance of responsibility. And by the way, most of these guys struggle in these areas because they were the stud in school, the athlete got away with stuff. And I don't mean that as a negative towards them, because not everybody,
right.
But and they need to know how they live and what they do and their behavior and what they say does have a sphere of influence. And how are they influencing people, for the better or for worse?
Oh, yeah. So in all your years of coaching, in any, what's been like your coolest moment, like your the coolest moments where you're like, like this is what it's all about?
There are a number of things that come to my mind. My first year, I came to a school that hadn't won a game in 2 years, and I was crazy. I don't know how else to say it, man. We were like, we're going to get this done. And within 4 years, there was a league of about 8 to 10 teams. And within 4 years, we won it. And then we won it 6 years in a row. This was in soccer. We were really good. That is a phenomenal memory, that not only did we come in and we weren't a flash in the pan, but we built a program and it went well. There are so many others, and I don't want to take away from anybody that might listen here or they're part of the team. But my last year coaching, I told our team that I was leaving in January, joining Nations of Coaches. And everybody told me not to, but I can't hide stuff very well. And so I brought him in December, and I said, listen, I got to tell you guys something. God's called me to this ministry. And we were really good. God had given me 2 young African-Americans willing to move to Wisconsin, an hour and a half above Green Bay. They looked at me and said, Coach, man, where are we going to get a cut up here? Where am I going to get my haircut? Ain't no place. So long story short, hit it off with these 2 guys. They were young in their faith. They were so excited. I had some guys that had grown up around the church. They were like, oh, these guys are bringing some juice. It just melded us all together. And the year before, we had lost 8 games in a row by 4 or 5 points. We were really young. I had lost our best player. He went to another school because they started sports. I knew he was going to go. He loved me. I loved him. But I was like, no, you got to go. Long story short, my last year, we were number 2 in the country. And I was regional coach of the year and then national coach of the year. Now, there's only like 60 teams, so it doesn't. But that was because those guys came in and they were so about serving each other. So the highlight is we didn't win it all. We probably weren't good enough that we were close. But what we did do is we changed a really scenario that looked bleak and made it special because they were so humble, teachable. And by the way, they both live in Wilson, North Carolina, not too far, probably from Robbins and Ocean Isle. And long story short is both of those guys, one of them is a really special story. I'm going to share it. One of them had a child out of wedlock, and he had playing at a JUCO. And when he did, he almost had a nervous breakdown because he loved basketball, but he felt he should be responsible. So he went home and he took care of the girl. And the other kid committed to us. And then he called me and said, Coach, man, I got a friend and he's really good, man. But he's been out of basketball for 2 years. And he went through he had emotional breakdown. And I said, have him call me. So he called me. His name is Anthony. No, I never called me Auntie. Yeah, what's going on? I'm Coach Wehry, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I'm just not sure, Coach. But I'm in a better spot. And I know I need to get my degree. And I said, well, let's just pray about it. And I prayed with him. And he told me this 6 months later. He goes, Coach, I never had a man pray with me before. He said, you don't know what that was like. And I was like, what was it? He goes, Coach, it was so special. He said, so he came. Now, here's the best part. He was unbelievable. He was top 10 player in the country. The other kid was really good too. But the big thing was he graduated, got his degree, went back to the girl, got married. They have another child. They have both kids, and he's coaching today. So I flew into Charlotte, went to Wilson, North Carolina. I'm at Wilson, North Carolina, and I walk in the gym, and he goes, there he is. He's having practice. Made his team run. He goes, this is the guy that changed my life by loving me like Jesus. Public school, though, I'm like, okay, right. Like I'm almost in tears. And I got to tell you another one. This is what's so crazy. I was at this public school. I was a continuous substitute teacher. Do you know what that is? That's basically Captain Handout. Here, do this today. Do this. I would walk in. Hi, my name's Pete. I'm Captain
Handout. I was going to say glutton for punishment.
Yeah, right. But I loved it, man. I would come in, and there was this kid, and he played football and he played baseball, and I ended up coaching the baseball. And I never. He said, he wrote me an email. He supports me. I put out on Facebook. This is one of my first years, 10 years ago. He goes, Coach, you don't know this, but I was a young junior in high school. I didn't feel like I fit in. I was a pretty good athlete, but I was considering taking my life. And he said, there was this guy that came into our class, and there was something different about him. And I'll never forget when I realized that you weren't high, you were just high on Jesus. And I want you to know, I trusted Jesus as my Savior my junior year because I started going to a Bible study because you talked about who God was in your life. And he said, now I'm married, both my kids are believers. I'm sitting there going, I had no idea. And what I'm saying there is, everybody out in the audience that knows the Savior, you don't have to be cool. You don't have to be funky. You just need to love God, love others. And you don't know the impact. Like I'm Lisa, you got to read this. Like I had no idea. He has supported me for 10 years. It's crazy.
It makes me think of the song, and it's a long time ago, but it was a Ray Boltz song. It's called Thank You. Have you ever heard that song?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
it's like, I dreamed I went to heaven and you were there with me. And it's like we walked across the streets of gold beyond the crystal sea. And then he talks about all these people that keep coming up. And it's like, you're the reason I'm here. Like people that he doesn't know, but it's like, thank you for giving to the Lord. I'm a life that was changed. Like, and you didn't know me, but you changed my life.
And you know what's really cool is you asked me what was my favorite basketball or like coaching moment. And I realized now, like I had a good season, but the coaching moment was that kid marrying that girl, and they have an unbelievable family. And I know that they had some marital like issues, but they worked through it. That's part of it. And this guy is such a good spot, right? And it's just, that's what God does. So it's awesome.
Yeah. I always think I love how my pastor says it. He's like, it's not your job to save people. It's God's job to save people. It's just your job to be the light, lead them there. Like just be the salt and light, and it's not your job to save them. So that takes all the pressure off. I'm like, well, if I don't have to save him, I just have to be a good human being that shines light. Like, okay, game on.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So just to kind of talk a little bit about the Nation of Coaches. I know we've talked about it kind of here and there throughout it. I kind of sent a couple of things to you. You kind of mentioned maybe you were like writing a book. You've got the Nation of Coaches. So where are you now? Like, what are your goals? What's your mission? Where are you at in kind of your journey? I know you talked about moving, but like, where are you at in your world here?
So very frankly, we love, we love your Uncle Pete. All right. So we love Nation Coaches. I'm 61. I could see myself doing this for another 10 years. And I'm careful how I say it's not hard. It's about people, relationships, maybe filling out a little Salesforce. That gets tedious, but we'll just do that, right? All that stuff. It's really about, and gaining the trust now and impacting coaches' lives. I always tell people when I was at the Final Four, the first 5 years, I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm meeting people. The last 3 years, guys are coming to our booth and saying, can I talk to you? I got an issue. And in the last 2 years, women run up to us and hug me. I don't even know them. I'm like, Lisa, I don't know. And they go, thank you for what you've done for our marriage. Thank you what you've done in women's Bible study. So it's like life-changing. So I do that. The book would be more about, and I've even thought about this, embracing, just what we've talked about, embracing this journey, embracing the struggles, embracing. So that is something that I am working on. When I get done with Nations of Coaches, say I'm 75, whatever, I think I could be a Walmart greeter. I really don't want to do that.
You're pretty personable.
Right. But I don't want to say log your goals, but I just have this niche with coaches. And I think that'd be a time when I would kind of do what the lady does with you, business coach. I would love to coach coaches. I do that on the side, maybe one a day for, and at that point, I don't know if we'd retire, but we would reserve a different way. But that could be when I'm 80. I love what I do. This is it. So So, but it's always about growing and taking people to another level, including yourself. Like me, I don't want to stay the same. I want to be more like Christ, and I want to be more impactful. And this studying Maxwell, and it's really good, but I think this needs to be said. I get around certain people and they don't want to be encouraged. They don't want it. I do the best I can, but then I move forward because there are people that want to be. And so I feel like this. I don't have time, and I don't mean that arrogantly, but I don't want to waste God's time. I want to continue to invest in people that want to impact others also. And it's really what Jesus did. He chose 12, and I'm careful I say this, he lost one, but he knew that. But he invested, and that's what I believe. I'm supposed to invest in 10, let them go. Invest in another 10, let them go. We have a guy in Florida that was already a strong leader, godly guy, Jim Good. Another great guy to have on a podcast. Jim's a reader, a grower. So, Jim, and he'll make fun of me. He calls me Big Petey. I said, call me Big Daddy. Long story short is we talk about this all the time. For last year, I've said him, we've communicated, how do we do this? How do you do this? He's the regional director of Florida, so I replaced myself in a way. He's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That's my dream, to see other guys. And he's only in his mid-40s, like almost 50. But he's going to do that. He's going to do that. He's already doing it. He's doing an unbelievable job. So that's my bent.
Well, that's exciting.
Yes, it is.
That's it. At what point, I mean, I talk a lot about shifting your career to your calling. At what point did you realize, because you said it, you were like, I love what I do. This is what at what point were you like, you know what, this isn't just a career. This isn't just what I'm showing up to do. Like, when did it become like, this is what he's called me to do, and this is what I'm going to do until I can't do it anymore?
Man, that's a really hard question for me, because I felt from the beginning God called me to impact people through coaching. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I was always doing that. I struggled with certain areas that like any other job you have to do. Like, I didn't love meetings, and but I don't mind meetings either. Depends what meeting. We all know that. I don't love the tedious stuff. I'm more visionary, and I'm more ideas. So I had to grow up and do those things. So always coaching for me was a calling. But when I was a dean of students, I loved it because I was digging in the lives and seeing kids changed who had grown up in the church. Everything you said, they knew all the right answers, but they were struggling in knowing who God was. And that is what our ministry was all about, life touching life. If you did not disciple, if you did not mentor as a math teacher, history teacher, they let you go. It was not about teaching a subject. It was about investing in a life. And that was so it was a calling there for me. That was an easy place to work. And then when Nation coaches, this is my love of athletics with my love for Jesus, and him saying, I'm going to take that and use it because that's who I am. So for the last 40 years, I've felt like I've been doing what God's called me to do, calling. But the last 10, I've had numerous kids that I coach, their donors and stuff, partners, they go, oh, coach, you were creative. This is what you're not afraid to meet. And by the way, I'll say this. You know how many pictures of big time coaches I have with me? None. None. And I'm going to say this because I have this all the time. Have you met this guy? Yep. And the truth is, they go number 2 just like I do. They got needs. Like they just need somebody not to treat them different, but to love them. Do I respect what they do? Yes. Do I respect who they are? Yes. Am I enamored with what they do? They're just gifted in this area, and they know it. So I hope that makes sense. Calling for a long time, girl.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap us up here, but I need you to do it. And I do like this little rapid fire round. So you don't know these questions, but you don't have to overthink this.
No, I'm not.
This is kind of like the first thing that comes to your mind. But since this is the Inspires podcast, I want to know what inspires you. So maybe what inspires you can inspire others. Okay, so here we go. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What song inspires you?
Boy, that's funny. What a beautiful name. What a beautiful name it is. Jesus. But I do like
Okay.
Coldplay. I do like Coldplay. So I almost threw out like Claps. Or what's the other one? Shoot, not Claps. What's the other one?
I don't know.
Shoot.
You're reaching like 10, 12, 15 years back.
Yeah, I'm old.
All right. What book inspires you?
Well, I'm going to give you two: the Bible and a great book, Mentor Leader by Tony Dungy. That's my tension. Mentor
Ooh,
Leader
why
by
that
Tony
one?
Dungy. It actually used it for my evangelism and discipleship class at Northland. It's phenomenal. It's about how to invest in people through coaching and even with what you being coaching or coaching people through a podcast. You're doing it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to write that down. Put it on my reading list. Okay. What person inspires you?
I mean, there's a lot, but my wife.
Pick one.
No, she it is pretty awesome because like I'm a get it done guy and she serves people. So I go, okay, I got to get more balance there. And so my wife inspires
me. What place inspires you?
Oh, this is terrible. You're asking. New England. Sitting. Yep. Yesterday we were in 80 degrees. Real, I don't know how to say this. Beautiful grass, deciduous trees, quiet. New England.
Gotta love that grass.
And a cup of coffee.
All right. So here's your last one. What hope or what thought inspires you?
Making a difference in somebody's life. Just if I can help make a difference in somebody's life, I'm easy to get up in the morning. And by the way, it's easy because God made a difference in me. I'm hoping I can make a difference in somebody with the gospel.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've made a difference in my life in just in a few years that I've been able to know you. And I'm so excited for the rest of our lives together as family.
I am too. Thank you so much, Jess. Honored.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you for coming on here today. My prayer before this was like, Lord, I don't even really know what we're going to talk about, but the one person who needs to hear it, help it reach them. So thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.